Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Writing Animal Characters. You may never need this panel, but then on the other hand, you might just. And we have some of the best animal writers around. Okay, they're not animals, but they write animals. And would you guys please introduce yourselves, even though most of you need no introductions?
I'm in the upper left of my screen, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. That's though beauty should come before age, and there's a lot of it here. I'm David Brin. I write sci-fi. Tomorrow and the next day I'm going to be wearing my NASA hat as a consultant on NASA's Innovative and Advanced Concepts program. Cool. And my Uplift universe has a lot of animals who can talk. So I guess I'm Dr. Doolittle.
Well, and aren't you also known for the Uplift War, David?
Yes, that's my Uplift universe, the Uplift War, Startide Rising.
Yes, talking to porpoises and such things. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Jody, how about you? You want to take it next?
And I am in the upper left of my screen. Therefore, I think that this is particular to one's own screen and one's own view of reality. I'm Jody Lynn Nye. I write science fiction and fantasy. I have written quite a number of animal characters, and I enjoy doing it. I'm probably best known for the cats that I write, but I have also written many dragons and tigers and all sorts of other critters. So that's what I'm doing here.
Very cool. And Ms. Lacky, how about you?
Mercedes Lacky, 136 books published and counting, mostly known for magic white horses that talk in your head.
You got some great dogs, too. Let's not forget the Apex dogs, okay?
Well, this is true, but they're not really dogs.
That's true, but you haven't met mine. I have one of them. We'll have to talk about that later. But and you look like you got a really comfortable chair. I think you get the comfortable chair award. And Neil,
I get the messy office award too.
Fair point. Okay. Yeah, you have earned that honor, I would say. But hello everyone. I'm Neil Litherland. I'm probably the least well-known person here, but I recently had my first talking animal book come out. Marked Territory is sort of a noir back alley thriller where the entire cast just happen to be animals. And people are sort of relegated to the roles that animals normally get in our books. And they're there, but we don't really care about them.
Well, I think it was the critic said Watership Down meets
the Maltese Falcon. Yes.
The Maltese Falcon. There you go. So we have got a great cast of characters to talk about writing about animals. So let me just throw out the first question. What's the most important thing when you are starting to write an animal character?
I think keeping in mind I'll do it. Keeping in mind the characteristics of the animal itself. Because otherwise, why aren't you just writing people? What is it you're trying to say when you're writing an animal? What characteristics are you trying to bring forward that make them the right character to frame in that story? So frequently for cats, it's because they are very funny. They don't necessarily mean to be funny, but they are. They have a great deal of dignity, which we can often shoot out from under them with a glass of water or a misplaced blanket or some other thing that interferes with their sense of self. I was in a panel years ago with Connie Willis called "Are There Too Many Cats in Science Fiction?"
No.
and she said the question should really be why aren't there more bulldogs in science fiction? And that became part of the discussion. But stories with cats can most frequently be comedies, and stories about dogs are most often tragedies because dogs are self-sacrificing beings. So it's the characteristics of the animal, I think, that is important to keep in mind.
Good point. And if you don't know, Connie Willis is a great bulldog lover. She always has a bulldog in all of her stories, even if it's just in the corner.
Quick interjection. I realized after my 6th novel that there was always a monkey or an ape. Now, sometimes they were starring roles, but ever since then, I've always made sure to include one, at least as a supporting cast.
As you should.
Is that sort of your version of the cameo that Alfred Hitchcock always put in.
I butted my. I cut in the line to mention that. Go ahead, Mercedes.
Basically, I would say you always must be aware not just of the characteristics of the animals that you are playing with, but of their fundamental ethological behavior and ethological niche. There are things that you will never ever get any fill in the blank to do. There are always those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You're never going to get a hawk to behave like a dog.
Right.
I want to see that now.
So Neil, what's your words of wisdom there?
What I would tag on with it is, in addition to understanding, because we have a lot of cultural beliefs and they vary depending on what your background is about what certain animals are and what they represent. But there's also just at the baseline, animals have weird abilities and strange capabilities. And sometimes it's just, I need someone who can hear the murder from a block away. Yeah, so who do I have? And that narrows us down to certain animals. Or you might have, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was just a random thing I discovered doing research for my book. Is that, and I could be wrong on this because I am certainly in the armchair category, but it was that cats don't have the ability to taste sweet things.
That's right. That's true.
And I had that moment. I'm like, crap. Now I need to go back and cut this out of this section because that won't make sense otherwise.
Cool. So on the flip side, what do you want to avoid when you're writing about animal characters?
Making them too damn cute.
Making them little humans in fursuits.
Yes. Right. You want them to be truly cats or truly tigers or truly wolves.
No, I was a guest of honor at a furry con once, and there definitely are such things as little or very large, sweaty humans in cats.
Well, yes. Aside from that, because I just ran into this with one of the anthology stories that I was forced to reject.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's an animal, that doesn't mean you get to make it into a Mary Sue.
Yes.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, speaking of cats, of course, and I'm not going where you think I'm going. Cordwainer Smith.
Oh, God, yes.
Who really, people talk about, my Uplift series, and I always am very careful. And in fact, I drop little nigglets in my books to mention that there were others who did Uplift before me. H.G. Wells, The Island of Dr. Moreau, certainly Frankenstein in a sense, Pierre Boulle in Planet of the Apes, Cordwainer Smith. The legend of Lost Kamel was the cats were especially the mother little kittens, and Jonathan Lethem and Gun with occasional music. Certainly, there were uplifted and genetically altered animals in the past. Anne McCaffrey's dragons. She always would get steamed if you called her a fantasy writer. Mm-hmm. She was a science fiction writer. The dragons were genetically engineered. No, the thing that I wanted to do that was different was all of those previous authors had done finger-wagging morality tales about humans doing the obvious bad thing, and that's enslaving them. And I consider it a job of science fiction to notice when the message has been received. And that's the biggest problem with Avatar. A wonderful movie, but it's absolutely... dances with very tall Smurfs. And I'm sorry, I left out a bunch of fairies. Yeah. And with very, 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 very tall Smurfs. And so my point was, go to the next thing. And pardon me. And the next thing is, what if we have a civilization that does uplift, having seen all the Planet of the Apes movies and read all these things? And they decide, guess what? We're going to do something else. We're going to welcome them. Won't they still have interesting problems? And so
Absolutely.
that's the notion underlying. Oh, I also Clifford Simak, the dog. The dogs lead the world, are the leading race in the world, very responsible in the last story of his collection City. Very moving story.
To tag on to one of the earlier points of a thing that I usually suggest people do is, if you have animals, ask, are we supposed to understand what their society is if they have one? And if they don't have one, why don't they have one? It was a for folks who are willing to dig into to self-published novels. I put one out a few years ago titled Crier's Knife, where one of the secondary characters, though not a main by any stretch of the imagination, is our protagonist's grandmother's cat. And she looks like a perfectly normal cat, but nothing on that mountain is perfectly normal. And we slowly begin to realize, like, oh, your grandmother's a witch. Right. And so at that point, the question is not what makes this particular breed of cat or this unusual cat, stand out. It's what are we saying about its mistress by having it as the herald? And so it's just one of those little things of, is the animal meant to be on its own, or is it meant to be sort of an introduction to another part of the world that we need an easy way to get into?
I'm not familiar with that concept.
You just go for it.
I could see it. I knew it was coming.
Well, Charlene Harris played with that same idea in Midnight, Texas. She has a talking cat. Jody, you must have read the series too.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of figured. And it's a great series if you want to see that sort of use of the cat, because the cat is almost the main character in that way. You don't know that until you come around and you read into it. So any other points that you think that people should be thinking about when they're writing about animals or writing animal characters?
I would say make up your mind if it's going to be a natural animal with animal instincts, animal intelligence, animal knowledge, or if it's going to be uplifted in some way, or if it is an entirely different species that looks like a cat, or that it is an advanced cat, and stick with it. I have read some things where the author sort of slewed all over the scale with the same critter. And it's confusing for the reader, and it makes you wonder where the story is actually going.
Makes sense. Anybody else want to throw in on that?
If there's a culture, if they are advanced enough to have some kind of a culture, then I agree totally with Jody Lynn. You have to try to be consistent about the culture. One concept that occurred to me recently is we've been learning more and more that animals sometimes approach humans very accurately, knowing which humans will help them and which will avoid. Elephants are proving to be very, very good at that.
Yes.
This one young male elephant that was wounded by a poacher went over a mountain pass that it had never been over before in order to get to a nature center that would help him. Somehow got that information. And this seems to happen all the time with dolphins, that they know where we are good gods and where we are bad gods. Mm-hmm. And looking at it that way, you actually get some insight, because we are really pretty damn impressive to them. And making that choice, there's one thing that was mentioned that I think is a great project. Mm-hmm. Almost no animal would this project work so well with. Migratory herds of matriarchal-led, long-memory elephants erect a few dozen obelisks along their paths with simple, indestructible screens and about 5 buttons that do a few things. See if they leave messages for each other, if they learn how to do that, creating memory outside yourself.
Yeah, and it changed humankind. I think it could do the same thing for intelligent animals as well. Once we started relying on the written word, our memories went to pieces.
You could do that for $2 million.
Probably.
Well, let's
Crows are-
Mercedes. You're the I was gonna say now, Jody. You know about crows, and I think Mercedes. does
Yeah,
a lot of-
crows are very good at doing that. In fact, they pass the memory of good guys and bad guys by facial recognition down to successive generations.
Lamarckian learning. Isn't that fascinating? Wow.
Prairie dogs have been known to do that.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know about prairie dogs. That's very.
Well, their barks actually will talk about female human wearing red, and a bad one or a good one. They will. Of course, all female humans wearing red are good.
Wow.
Sorry.
That's okay. Basic bias. It's okay. You're going to make me go back and start interviewing animals again, David. This is making me just so curious. I didn't get to interview a groundhog before. So that's next on the list. Well, now, needless to say, there is one character while we're writing about animals that is kind of on the stage, whether we like it or not, and that's the human. How do you factor the humans off the stage? Or bring them on, but how do you play them in there?
I got a thought on that one.
Because I know you didn't have any humans in yours.
Sorry, I got like a weird glitch. I wasn't sure who was being addressed.
Well, it doesn't matter. She's thrown out. There's a group.
Oh, okay.
Everybody, anybody.
But yeah, it was a thing that I found of again, because the setup I had for Mark Territory is very traditional Bogart noir. Of it's whenever there were humans, it was a thing I made I did very deliberately of Leo, our bruiser Maine Coon character who's going around solving problems. He doesn't recognize ethnicity in people. It's like he can get vague age and occasional gender, but it's just like, it's people. They're in the way. Move. It's like only people who are like directly responsible for feeding him or who could be a problem. Does he know their names? He knows their relationship history. He knows what's going on in his little corner of the world. But everything else, it's like, of course, there's people. We're in the middle of New York City, but we're not stopping to talk to them. We're not listening to their conversations. Their problems don't affect us. And I think that was really the big way to keep humans out of it, is because I'd read a lot of books where it's like, cat solves murder or like dog avenges owner who was robbed. And it's like, all the animals are the ones with problems. The humans are not involved in it at all, aside from like background players. So they're sort of like ninjas in Japanese theater of, they're there, but you've been trained not to pay attention to them.
Right.
I've read a number of things like that. The ones where the humans don't appear at all, except as the occasional hazard. Going all the way back to Peter Rabbit, things like Redwall and Tail Chaser's Song, and I cannot remember the name of that extremely depressing rabbit saga.
Watership Down.
Thank you. But Diane Duane's Cats of Grand Central is a terrific one, because people are there, but the story is all about the cats, not about the people at all.
Very cool. Anybody else want to get in on that one? That question?
Oh, I made humans comic relief.
Well, aren't they always?
Yes.
The History Channel.
At least as far as cats are concerned, yes, humans are always comic relief.
The History Channel had a series that was very popular for a while. It's most popular, called Life After People.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I was a pundit pretty frequently on that one, and the conceit is that people vanish all at once, and they never talk about why. I was the one who was allowed to talk about why did we suddenly leave, or as in Clifford Simak's story, or did we wipe ourselves out, or one of those things.
Brief aside on that for folks in the audience who love funny shaped dice and telling stories around a table with their friend. There is a role-playing game out there from Onyx Path Publishing called Pugmire. And if you haven't played it, I highly recommend checking it out. But the conceit of it is it's very, 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 very far post-apocalyptic world where like genetically tampered with animals, several species have risen and they've kind of formed their own pseudo-medieval society. And so there's this dogs in particular have the religion of man. And it's just like that question of what did we leave behind for them? It sort of plays into this, so I thought I'd give it a shout out because it's a very amusing game.
Cute.
I think it's important also for us to recognize that we aren't just scary to animals because of tools. Our physiognomy is intimidating.
We're weird looking.
For our mask, we are very tall and formidable.
And
we have
racing eyes.
That's exactly. You saw me. We have exactly the look
of a predator.
Yep.
We are an apex predator.
We throw. Like nobody else has ever been, and William Calvin thinks that we threw first, and that led to language, anticipatory thinking, and all that sort of thing. We sing. We have better when we have good pitch. We have better pitch than anybody, including songbirds. And of course the big thing, which was being able to run in the noonday sun in a relays. I mean, that just made us,
Yeah, persistence hunting. That is the thing.
Language, all of the things that animals do not duplicate, and symbolic language.
Well, I think it's very important for us. We've mentioned several of these animal species, but dolphins, chimpanzees, prairie dogs, crows, and so on, parrots, sea lions, they seem to crowd up against a glass ceiling that nature and Darwin allow. And they say this much is relatively easy. And velociraptors, I believe Spielberg, I think they probably were that clever too, only they never developed a space program. And so, no more.
Well, there was this big rock that got in the way.
Yeah. But you see, people get the wrong lesson from how many of these pre-sapient species there are. They say that should humble us. But in fact, what it makes clear is how hard it is to bust through a certain level. And my friends who work with dolphins, they say that they've never said this in any scientific paper because it's not scientific. But their impression is that the dolphins will give anything to be smarter.
Well,
I get that. I have parrots, many parrots, and I get the same impression from them. They try to do things that require a thumb. We have them. I have them out generally on the back of my chair when I'm working, and they see me typing down here. And it is definitely not a case of monkey see, monkey do. It is a case of I see that this is getting something that I want, and I want it. I want to be able to do it myself. And they will come down here on the keyboard and do this with their little claw, trying to get the same result I'm getting because they're going to the same area on the keyboard.
Well, I believe it. Irene Pepperberg, I know you must have.
Yeah, Irene was a very good friend of mine. And she was briefly before Alex died, she had started a new area of experimentation with him where he was able to select things with a computer that he could see with parrot manipulable keys.
Well, I had wanted to interview Alex or one of her other parrots when I was interviewing animals, and she wouldn't do it because she was afraid of but she wanted to know about. I mean, we got to work with Alex for a week when. Oh, really cool. Yeah, we're good, very good friends with Irene. She's a quick lady. She very, very brilliant. It was when she was still at the University of Arizona, and my parents were still living in Arizona. And I said, look,
you've got all your grad students going on Easter break. How about if I come down, I combine a trip to my parents with coming on down there and doing all your cage cleaning for that week?
What a deal.
And it ended up way more than that. We ended up doing training sessions with Kaio and was it Wart?
That was I didn't.
I think it was Kaio and Wart.
The earlier one.
And we also, and I also ended up doing helping her with her page proofs on her scientific book,
Very
as opposed
cool.
to Alex and me. She
Very
kept
cool.
asking me things like, "Is this right? Can that copy editor make me do that?" And I kept saying no. The copy editor cannot make you do anything. If you don't like it, you write "stet" in the margin.
Well, I think that she ran into a lot of problems that a lot of scientists who were on the edge ran into. That happened in my own family, where they could not publish certain things because they were considered too outre. So I have
It
a lot
isn't
of
so much outre, it's that when you're in the kind of research frontier that she's at,
Mhm.
you absolutely have to do a lot of positive control on anthropomorphizing.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
That's why I mentioned what I said about the impression one gets from
Yeah.
the dolphin researchers.
Absolutely. Well, other than the ones we've mentioned, are there any books or stories you would want to encourage readers to check out? Because I thought of Earth Abides, the great post-apocalyptic story from, I think it was the 70s or 80s, that dealt with the animals all dying off or whatever because humans died. What other books or stories would you recommend?
Pride of Chinur by C.J. Cherry.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, yes, that's about aliens who evolved into a social, more than social pattern that resembled prides of lions.
Yes.
So I think it's a very fascinating extrapolation of what a lion-like social pattern would look like.
Mhm.
You know, when you talked about animals learning from each other, every year when it gets hot down here in San Diego, my bees flock to our swimming pool to get water.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they died by the dozens until one day the dying slows down because some genius bee figured out where to land and then creep down the tiles or something. And this year it's landing on the floater. But always the other bees learn from this one Da Vinci bee, and then suddenly the dying slows down. So there's I have no particular great insight or lesson to be learned from that, except
They learned something. That's really cool.
they experiment, and then occasionally you have somebody who's very, very smart. I mean, you talk about Mercedes and her Parrots. Well, per volume or per pound or per kilogram, boy, do they have great brains.
And it's amazing what they can do with that.
And why are ostriches so dumb?
Well, because
Australia.
They have a tiny, tiny, tiny little brain.
Yeah, but they're supposed to be big birds.
They're big birds, but it's the same thing as hawks. Hawks, or more to the point, owls. Owls have this enormous cranium, but most of their little tiny brain, and it is a tiny brain, is hardwired for instinctual behavior. Absolutely hardwired. The same with hawks. You really don't have to teach a young bird of prey how to hunt. You just have to give him practice when you're rehabbing. So, by the way, rehabbing birds of prey is not for those who love little Bun Bun. Because there are sacrifices must be made, and Bun Bun gets to make the sacrifices.
Fortunately, there's a lot
We
of
honor Bun Bun.
Yes. So, but what they need is practice, but the skills are already there. But it's hardwired, and that's what all the neurons are devoted to: is hardwired instinctual hunting behavior.
And that is one of the things that sets apart predator from prey, is that predators don't necessarily need to be what we would think of as smart, because their survival is not as much at stake as the prey, who frequently develop intelligence in order to deal with the threat of the predator.
That's quite true.
And there you get into something very important, which is what we talked about: culture and fundamental personality. And this has to do really with the core essence of writing aliens in science fiction. And Larry Niven really showed us the path in his early works, where he showed the Pearson's puppeteers were descended from herd animals that got smart enough to wipe out all predators. But their fundamental personality that they then modify, you can then modify, but the baseline of the Pearson's puppeteer is paranoid.
Yes.
Because they're from herd animals.
Yes.
The difference between a stalking carnivore and a pack carnivore: the pack carnivore has a great deal of empathy within the pack and almost none beyond, and we benefit from that with the dogs. The stalking carnivore has a lot of empathy, just very little sympathy. So she's, the tiger's thinking, what is that deer thinking right now? Well, she can do that, but she doesn't sympathize. She
what is that deer thinking, and how can I manipulate that to my advantage so that it runs right into my jaws?
And that is, of course, creepy, because it's a lot like us.
Yeah, it is a lot like us.
Yeah.
There is a very interesting there is one species of hawk that has social behavior.
Really?
Which is absolutely fascinating. It's the only one. It's the Harris hawk that lives in the deserts of Arizona, New Mexico, Mexico itself, Southern California, some Texas. And because they live in the desert, prey is scarce. Available prey is sometimes too big for an individual hawk to take down. And they hunt in family groups.
And that's not terrifying at all.
Then not only do they hunt in family groups, but they are so socially wired to do that falconers can take birds that have never seen each other before, go out on a hunt, put all the birds in the air at once, and if you did that with any other bird of prey except maybe falcons, there would be an immediate bloodshed.
Wow.
And they will all set themselves up in a hunting hierarchy. And then when they go after something that is jackrabbit size, because a jackrabbit is bigger than any one Harris can take, or something that is flying, they'll line themselves up and come in like fighter bombers one at a time.
Wow.
The first one will not even try to bind. It'll come in with its talons fisted, and it'll knock the crap out of the prey. Wow. And then the second one will probably fist to give it a second knock. The third one will kill it.
Then they share,
wow.
They share it when they catch it, or is it just?
Yeah, they share it when they catch it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, let me ask you one more question before you have to go. We've talked about where writing has been with animal characters. Where do you see the writing going? Because obviously writing is going to keep going. We're still going to have people out there writing animal characters. What do you see them doing?
Well, empathy, the extension of horizons, is one of the big projects of the Enlightenment West, and especially science fiction, because that's what we do. We extend the horizons that we're willing to consider, horizons of fear, which is aliens. It used to be other countries. Science fiction extends the horizons of fear, of danger, the horizons of exogamy, sexy aliens, the horizons of opportunity, horizons of tolerance and inclusion. And we are uniquely self critical of the degree to which we failed to extend these horizons, and legitimately so, because that's our big project, and being smug about what we've accomplished gets us nowhere. So the idea that I'm sorry, I'm getting a little pedantic here, but the idea that science fiction looks to what was strange or what was dismissed as merely animal as something for the next empathy exercise in surprise empathy. But you see, one of the dangers is science fiction is greedy, and we may use up the territory of the potentially tolerated. I mean, what if I have a story about that in a post singularity? Everything is a nexus, and everything is part of the whole, and all that sort of thing. And the crisis in this post singularity world is that the latest wave of liberals wants to give full citizenship rights to fictional characters.
Okay.
Well, I'm listening.
Yeah, I was going to say, so all sounds good. Anybody else want to jump in there?
Well, we did start a few minutes after the hour.
Right, so that's why I'm running a little over.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
So a thought
We still
thought
have
that I
plenty
had
of
on
time
it was
left.
is just what I've noticed as a reader, not necessarily as a writer, is I'm clearly the newest one to the game here, as for everybody on the panel. But it's a thing I feel like animal characters comes in waves of the idea of like animals as protagonists will be really popular for a while, and then it'll sort of fade into the background, and then we get like animal as support character, animal as MacGuffin, animal as whatever role they fill, and then like they get popular again, and people remember. It's like when I was a young reader, I remember there's this TV show, this comic book, this whatever I read, and I haven't seen that in a while, so now I want to do my take on it. Of It's similar now. I've seen it with zombies. I've seen it with vampires. I've seen it with cat people, both horror and science fiction. I don't think that cycle's going to stop, but I think that each new iteration of it is going to be very interesting and will probably reflect whatever's going on at the time. It's a thing I like to do, of go back and find older pulp authors or older science fiction authors, and just what was your take on this well-known pylon of the genre? And then occasionally I'll have that moment of like, oof, that would not fly today. And then we go forward another 20 years and be like, well, what was it then? And then what was it, when I was a child? And then what was it when I wasn't paying attention in high school?
Good point. Mercedes or Jody?
I think that one of the possibilities of fiction going forward is animal as alter ego. We already have the possibility. When you have, say, a werewolf, you already have somebody who is dealing with the dichotomy of being a human being and then the pure savage of a wolf. And yet, if you explore wolf culture, which it does have, it has hierarchy, it has education, it has protection, it has all of the things that perhaps an early tribe of human beings would have accomplished. What's holding them back from moving forward on that? But looking at them instead of as a pack of werewolves with its own vocabulary, like the alpha is always the most superior male, etc. What if the transformation becomes complete and you do transit from a human being to an animal of your choice, possibly fulfilling the fantasy of every furry I know. But how would that change society if you were suddenly found yourself living next door to a family of ponies? And so on. I devolve towards humor. I can't help it. But you could also tell some very serious stories about what are you leaving behind in order to take up an animal identity, and what changes? What do you leave behind? What do you gain? And also that explores a lot about what we think about ourselves and what we think about animals And is that something to aspire to? Is that something to escape to?
Very cool. Very cool. I like the way you're thinking, Jody. Okay, Mercedes, how about you? Any
I
idea
got
where we're
nothing.
going? Sorry.
I got nothing.
Well, I'm sure come up with something, but
I love what Jody Lynn said about the lycanthropes, the wolf, because I think that they're by far the most underrated monsters. There's a hierarchy of monsters. The elite aristocrats are the vampires, of course, and then
Oh, they think they are. They think they are. They're a bunch of cosplaying assholes, but they
but they dress elegantly.
they're cosplayers.
Yes, I like that. I like that.
Yeah, it's the fantasy of being able to take a nap and all of your problems go away when you wake up because everyone's dead.
So the Lothman proletariat are, of course, the zombies, but the lycanthropes are the middle class monsters because they have angst. I've got the lawn needs mowing. My kids don't understand me. I have the report due tomorrow, and the moon is coming up, and the shackles in the basement haven't been oiled in last month.
I wrote a story like that, David. I'll send it to you.
I wake up in the forest with stuff in my teeth. I pray it isn't going to be human. This angst is, I think, terribly important. And I tried to capture that in my sci-fi comedy, which I would love to send you a PDF, especially Mercedes and Jody Lynn, because
Love to have it.
because it's all about a planet where these afterlives, shall we say, are a normal thing.
We, Cody Martin and I are doing, in fact, a series of novellas under the heading of Reboots, which was kicked off because someone asked me to contribute to an anthology of vampires, werewolves, and zombies in space. And I was bitching to Cody about what a stupid idea what that was. Why on earth would anyone ever send them to space? And then I came up with an idea.
That's the way it works.
And the idea is basically you don't have FTL, but you want to explore other worlds, and potentially there's stuff that's valuable enough to send back in slow cargo. So you send vampires out. They live forever. All they need is a little bit of blood. You send in then as the middle management, middle class grunts. You send the werewolves with them because they constantly regenerate. So they supply the vampires with blood, and they do the dirty work that the vampires are too aristocratic to do. And then for your janitor crew, you have zombies.
And they can withstand vacuum.
They can withstand vacuum, and if one of them gets broken, you just shove them out the airlock, and you get another one out of storage.
Brains.
Just don't ask them to do anything complex.
And they eat dehydrated brains, which don't take up a lot of space. And they can withstand radiation. So if you have a radiation leak from your reactor drive, you just send a few zombies in, and if a couple of them burn up, it's no big loss.
And they also are very good at singing because they get out of their graves and on the hillside, and they sing these fabulous melodies, always original, because decomposers are sublime.
Oh, God.
Whoa, with that.
That sort of mushroom control, I would say.
Just a second. I'm not quite done. Just to show you that animals. Oh, we've got plenty of time. Just to show you that intelligent animals, are not restricted to strictly science fiction. The following was from Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
Always the best.
One of our great philosophers.
Exactly.
Evelyn, a modified dog, viewed the quivering fringe of a special doily draped across the piano with some surprise. In the darkened room where the chairs dismayed and the horrible curtains muffled the rain, she could scarcely believe her eyes. A curious breeze, a garlic breath that sounded like a snore, somewhere near the Steinway or even from within, had caused the doily fringe to waft and tremble in the gloom. Evelyn, a dog having undergone further modifications, pondered the significance of short person behavior in pedal depressed, panchromatic resonance, and other highly ambient domains. Arf, she said.
Is there a Tom Waits cover of this? This sounds really familiar.
See, the notion that the fundamental culture, the fundamental sense of eerie sensitivity to things was what he captured. And none of her intelligence or...
with the communication problem.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wonderful. And now you've all heard for the first time David Brin sing on air. And I want to thank you, David, for making your world premiere here.
My world debut of a cover of Frank Zappa.
That's cool. That's very, very cool.
There are worse ways to start your career.
That's right. It's a good learning.
You would be a great lounge singer.
Yeah, there you go, David. I could see you doing that. Yeah, that's like your fifth career or something, you know.
A decent con act out of that.
If only there were lounges and cons available to do this in.
Yeah.
There are digital shows. We can get you a whole fake background, get some nice red curtains.
Right. I'll talk to Eric. See what we can do for you there.
But can you lounge across a piano elegantly?
That takes practice, but that's what separate takes are for.
Now, the next question is, can you do that in a red satin chemise?
I felt that I was like one of those tunes in Roger Rabbit, which is where you get a lot of animals, a lot of
Yes, anthropomorphic animals. Yes,
very, very anthropomorphic.
Although there were some that weren't.
Well, any last words? I'm putting that wrongly. Are there any last comments? Not last words. Last comments before we move to let you guys go, because I would love to keep you here all night, but I'm afraid your relative spouses, friends, dogs, and cats would probably get a little irked with me. And I never want to get a cat irked at me, really. Especially
it's about time to start hauling the parrots out, and they're about to voice their opinion that they have not yet had their out time. Oh, you want me to bring a parrot?
Yes.
I will bring a parrot.
Yay! 2 world premieres.
Meanwhile, Jody Lynn.
What's that?
Meanwhile, you have something concluded.
Meanwhile, there are a lot of great ideas out there. We have written many of them, but you can explore quite a few fantastic things that people are coming up with, and we continue to evolve because science fiction writers read one another. And then we say, oh, that's cool, but I can do this with that.
Right.
So what you're listening to this evening will give you ideas for your next story.
Or as we heard earlier, that's stupid. Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
You summarized that very well, Neil.
Let's see, Mercedes, have you got us a friend?
She's getting a parrot.
Okay, good.
Joy, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, me. I'm really glad to see you guys thinking about animals as in different ways, because as some of you know, I do write dogs. That's mainly what I write, though I've written other animals. And there is such a range of emotion that humans don't pay attention to. And I'm not anthropomorphizing. This is really what they are. You can check out the research, but it's fascinating. So I love reading all of your work, because it shows such a range of animal behavior that is just fascinating. And I recommend everybody to read you guys. If you have any interest in good writing or writing about animals or good stories, all of you guys have more than enough. Between the 1, 2, 3, 4 of you guys there, I don't think that you could go bored for years. Oh, I hear a parrot out there. Mercedes, have you got us a friend?
This is Bite,
Aw.
BYTE.
Oh,
That
hello,
makes
bye.
He is a
Turkey?
male. He is a male Solomon Island eclectus,
Ooh.
and they are probably the weirdest parrots. Their behavior is the least like any other parrot that I know.
In what way?
They're hard to read.
He's visiting. He's leaving.
Oh, that's his favorite spot. That way he can see everything around him. They're very, very hard to read. It takes them a long time to warm up. They generally don't flock. They generally take a mate and stick with the mate and don't have a flock anywhere around them.
Mm.
So they don't have the flock behavior that you see in most parrots.
Hmm.
And their feathers are even very odd. They're kind of crunchy.
Yes.
They live in very deep rainforest. They're crunchy the way a peacock's feather is crunchy. If you've
Okay.
ever touched a
The
peacock.
plumage don't enter into it. A Monty Python there.
Yeah.
Ooh.
This reminds me of a thought, actually, something I had forgotten that I figured I'd bring now that we're closing on our end. Of anyone who wants to do weird stuff with animals, look at the real world, because truth is stranger than fiction.
Oh,
And
yes.
I was just thinking about it because there is a heavy metal band whose frontman is a parrot.
Is a African gray parrot.
Yes.
Called
Yes.
Kidding.
There are
Hate
actually
Beak is their name.
there are actually two bands that I know of that have
Oh, there's another?
frontmen as parrots. The other one is Half Moon Bay, and their frontman is a cockatiel.
Oh, cockatiel. I believe
His name is
that.
Scooter.
Oh, is this the cockatiel that dances and pounds and jumps around? I mean, he's
That's a
really cool.
cockatoo.
Oh, okay.
Cockatiels are much smaller. Now,
Okay,
Half Moon Bay has a cockatiel as their frontman who mostly whistles.
Why not?
And so it is one of those things that if your readers ever approach you, be like, that was really creative. How did you come up with it? Just like, I didn't. This is actually a thing. I just thought it was fun.
Yeah,
Right.
it is. Hate Beak is an African gray, and they basically record him and then incorporate his various vocalizations into their heavy metal stuff.
That's neat.
Yeah, you are so with it. You are so with it.
Isn't that wild? Oh, wow. Well, any other notes before you guys want to sign off? Like I said, my last note is read all your work. Just start at the top and read them all.
Yes, please buy all our books. We're sitting here at home in quarantine. We need money
So that we can buy more books.
so that
Right.
I have a dozen hungry parrots, 6 cats, not counting the outdoor cats, and 3 peacocks, and they are all must eat regularly every day. So please save the parrots and the cats, and don't make me feed the cats to the parrots.
Oh, the one last question I should ask you is, what's your next book that's coming out? Work, story, whatever. Who's it coming out with?
I'll start since
Okay.
the next one coming out will be in December. It's another Elemental Masters book. It's the only one in the DAW series that takes place in the U.S.
Oh,
and it's called Jolene.
okay, cool.
Okay.
And yes, it is very much involved with the Dolly Parton song.
Oh, wow.
I realized when I heard the song about the third time through, which I'm very fond of it, that it's basically the end of the Ukrainian folktale, The Queen of Copper Mountain.
Oh,
So I won't say anything more than that.
what a teaser.
Except women whose names start J-O rock.
It's
Well,
true.
thank you, David. Thank you. Jody and I can work with that.
Absolutely.
What else? What have you got coming out next? Because I know you've got stuff coming out.
Which one?
What would you like to talk about?
Who?
Jody. Jody,
Oh,
then I'm gonna come to you. Jody.
I'm working on a book with Eric Flint for the 1632 universe. I'm working on the next Myth Adventures that I've been doing since Robert Asprin passed away. So,
Cool.
2 really nice projects. Not close enough to tell you the pub dates, but definitely in progress.
Very cool. David, what are you working on? What's coming out?
Oh well, yeah, I self-published a political book that no Democratic pundit or no pundit or politician has paid the slightest attention to, so it was just a waste of time.
It must
I've republished a whole bunch of my novels that I got back under the 1976 Copyright Act. If you guys have anything that's been under the same contract for 35 years, you can take it back. And then I have my new comedy, The Ancient Ones, and I'm trying to clear decks to write that Uplift sequel that people want. So,
Yay!
cool. Neil, how about you? What's going on?
Mark Territory dropped on the 1st, so it is still nice and steamy for anybody who wants it. I run the
I
gaming
hate
blog
to think
Improved
the
Initiative.
comparison you're making to your work.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more of birth than other things, but that works too. I have 2 blogs that I'm running: The Literary Mercenary and Improved Initiative. This is more for Joy than for the readers because she can help with this one. But the potential sequel for Mark Territory hit 40K today, so we'll see how that turns out.
Very cool.
And, that's really what I'm focusing on for the rest of the year.
Very, very cool. Glad to hear it. Well, and for those of you who follow my stuff, I've got some things in the work. I've got a political book. I know how you feel, David. I don't expect them to read it either. It's just my own thing. I'll write it anyway. Then I've got several other books in the work, and it's just a matter of some fantasy, some 1632, just kind of all over the board. Hank rewrite and doing a sequel on that. And then I've got a YA that involves a beagle, a dragon, and a 13-year-old. No, she's now 18-year-old girl. So it's
That's a pitch.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of weird. You can blame Terry Brooks for that one, okay?
That's fair.
He challenged me, and it's his fault. It's all his fault. But now I think we pretty much run out of time before Alan comes over and dings me, since he just lives across the sound from me, and he could very well ding me very quickly. So I better let everybody go, but I want to thank all of you guys for being here. You are fantastic. And when I say read your stuff, I mean it. Read your stuff. If you want to learn how to write, read all this stuff. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future, everybody. And good luck.
thank you, Joy, and thank you,
Thank
Alan.
you very much.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks.